You were there from the beginning, from the
Yeah.
thought. Now, I have a kind of a question about present day Xbox that maybe you can give a little foresight to. With the recent cancelations of Fable, Scalebound, Press Play, I think another studio they kind of pushed out. Game creation right now for Xbox, a lot of people are kind of worried about, and they think that maybe it's something that Microsoft has a lot of, the parent company has over Xbox. Now that's just some of the thought that goes out there. What do you think of their first party situation and how to create games for Phil moving forward? How do you think he can do that? And do you think he will be able to do that without having the first party support, say, of Sony, which obviously they have a ton, but they have to create games either through second party or third party marketing deals. How do you feel that that's going to evolve under Phil moving forward?
So, yeah, that is, a gripe that I see a lot of people making online. And I mean, as a gamer, I totally feel it. Like I was so psyched for Scalebound, for instance, it just sucks. But, I've been in the game business for a long time. Actually, after Microsoft, I went and did financing for games, believe it or not. So I did structured financing for video games. We did dollars of financing for games. So I learned all about what a motherfucker it is to put up budgets for games, because the people who give you the money to make games, and that could be investors or it could be like, guys at Microsoft, are not gamers and they're not creative people. And if, a game goes a couple of months or 6 months without showing a lot of progress, or if it needs a redesign or some things aren't working, those people tend to have a hard time continuing to support the creative guys, and they want to cancel it and cut their losses.
Mm-hmm.
Because until you've been through the creative process and you've seen how every single project is a fuck show at some point, right?
Right.
And the ones that come out are the ones that somehow get through the fuck show, and everybody continues believing in them, and they come out, And I gotta say, Sony is a lot better at this than Microsoft. Nintendo is a lot better at this than Microsoft. And the reason isn't that people at Sony are smarter than Microsoft people, or have more heart. It's that Sony is funded by people who have been in the music business, in the television business, in the movie business, and who have had a substantial portion of the revenue come from PlayStation. And that revenue has come by risking a lot of money with first party.
Yeah.
Just look at Last Guardian. How much did that cost? And Microsoft would have canceled that game 50,000 times over, right? Given how long it took. Because the heat is on Phil way more than the heat is on Shu, who is in charge of content at Sony. He has a big advantage because he has very patient capital. And the guys who are in charge of that pile of money at Sony understand the creative process. And, this has been a problem since the early days of Xbox. When we were launching, Kevin asked for a very large, multi-tens of millions dollars budget for first party, where you basically pay for most of the development of a game by a third-party developer to get it exclusive. Mm-hmm. Okay? And we had that money approved, but try as hard as we couldn't spend it, because the people in charge of the money couldn't understand why we would just throw away all that money just to have a game. And isn't it just as good if it's on our platform and their platform? And they really didn't understand. And it wasn't that they were idiots, and it wasn't that they were dicks. It's that there were people from Windows and Office, and they'd never experienced anything like that. And you have to keep in mind that at that point in time, Microsoft Office was the most profitable business in the history of the human race. And that is an exact true fact. And so if you have people who are running the most profitable business in the history of the human race, it's hard to convince them that your idea for the way a software business should go is better than theirs. And it was very difficult. And Phil has much of the same problem. So, I really feel for Phil. And I think that Phil has done a tremendous job. Remember, Phil came in at a time when Xbox's reputation was really, really shitty.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
That's an understatement.
Like, remember that launch of
Not
Xbox One and like all that shit, and Phil turned that around. And now that it's normalized, I think people forget like how many battles the guy went through. And maybe it's just me understanding, and maybe Peter Moore understands, you know, what it's like to have to fight, you know, the machine at Microsoft to get budget for games. And again, you know, it's not as simple as it seems. They're not ignorant assholes who want you to fail, but they're also not people who are willing to take a $50 million bet on like a, you know, a game character.
Yeah, but wouldn't it behoove them to have a gamer that's even like, even though Phil's the head of Xbox, like, wouldn't it be good for them to have like one of those top guys, a Terry Myerson or even Satya? I don't think that they really are gamers per se and understand what really goes on in the industry. I think they just look at it from a bean counter position, and they don't understand what you know, the pulse of the game thing. And that's where I worry as an Xbox fan, is that they're not going to get properly funded to make game creation.
No, I think you know, I think.
Do you think that they ever get a little pressure on them and say, "Hey, let's give, you know, budgets maybe a little bit more"? Do they lighten up, or that, you know, I mean, or is it just always a struggle?
Look, I think they've lightened up pretty well in that, and people forget like the Red Ring of Death tragedy from Microsoft. Like, I think they dropped $1 billion cash.
Mhm.
Boom, fix that.
Yeah.
Okay, that shows that the guys in charge get it. You know, they had to treat the customers right. That was a big deal, and it's really fascinating to talk to Peter Moore about that, and to hear like I mean, like, you know, you think your life is bad. Your life is nothing compared to Peter Moore with the Red Ring of Death, and they stood behind him and let him do that, and they made it work. So, you know, they do understand that it's important, and it is a profit center for Microsoft, and they do understand that it requires support, and they do understand a lot about software. But I'll tell you what the difference is between Sony and Nintendo and Microsoft is it's like the difference between learning a language with software or language classes and being a native speaker who grew up in the culture. So you can learn about games, and you can sort of play games a little bit if you run a big software company like Microsoft or Dell or something, right? But you are fundamentally still a Windows guy or an Excel guy. And that's really where your heart lies. And you can get games. You're not going to feel it as like the depth of everything you think of. And you wake up in the morning with like new game ideas and you burn for that shit. It's not going to happen. Yeah. And I'll tell you something, at Nintendo and in much of Sony, people do get that. And the guys making financial decisions have grown up in an organization that's about entertainment, and that has, more importantly, an organization that has made all of its money doing that kind of a thing. Whereas Microsoft has made some of its money doing that kind of a thing, and it's relatively new, and most of its money doing other stuff. And it's a difficult thing because, you know, you want to get pissed off and say they're clueless and they need to fucking turn it around and stuff. But in point of fact, I mean, from my perspective, like, it's amazing. They invested in games in an insane way. I mean, it's like Siri is now their assistant. You know, damn. So that's impressive. It doesn't mean it's not frustrating, but I think it's easy to understand. I hope this makes it easy to understand. Mm-hmm. Exclusives are tough to get done, no matter how much Phil wants to do them. I mean, look, if you know Phil, you know, canceling something like Scalebound probably reduced him nearly to tears, because he's friends with all the guys who are making it. He believed in it a lot. He wants to fucking play it. He knows he's going to get it up the ass for canceling it. You know, that's not easy. It's not fun.
No,
you're absolutely right. Can I take it back to the OG for a minute? Now, everybody remembers having the hard drive in the OG Xbox. Like, how did you come, you know, say, you know what, you're gonna be able to store your music and you know, and all that, and, you know, background music and all, you know, included in that. Did you know it was going to be as big as it was? Because, I mean, when a 360, that was like one of the main things for that console.
Well, we knew that connectivity and storage was going to be super important. Like, even in 1999, And certainly now, like if you sat in front of a computer and it wasn't attached to the internet, something felt wrong, right? It was like limited. It wasn't really that useful. And you guys probably can't even imagine having a PC. Like you can't do anything on a computer if it's not attached to the internet. And so we knew even then that having it online was really important. The hurdles to online broadband gaming were extreme at that point. I mean, the internal firewalls at the ISPs, protocols, ping times were like seconds. So you know, it was never ever going to work. But at the same time, this is my friend Neil.
What's up, Neil?
You should pour me a scotch, man. At the same time, you know, you knew that it was going to be important at some point, right? And so we really fought for it. And the hard drive at one point was going to go out. I remember vaguely having to throw some kind of fit and threaten to like quit and shut everything down if we couldn't keep the hard drive. And I can't remember what that was about. But, you know, one of the things was that there were enough people at Microsoft. So some game things were hard. Like saying, hey, it's not going to run Windows was really hard, even though we sort of lied and said that it would and then switched it around at the end. We may have done that. But connectivity was easy. The hard drive was easy because these things were seen by Microsoft as being extremely important, you know, and being very forward-looking. And, you know, I think that Xbox Live launched with the original Xbox, but didn't really take off until 360 because it takes a while, not just technologically, but culturally, games online when they're used to playing console games by themselves, right? Online gaming took off on the PC because the PC it took a while for online gaming to come to the PC, just like it's taking a while for competitive gaming to come to the console, right? So, you know, all things with time, but I'm really glad that we put that in. I'm really proud of the fact that we put that in. And there were guys along the way who totally insisted on it. And I really got to give a shout out to Jay Allard here, who just fucking insisted on having a hard drive and an Ethernet adapter.
I have a two-part question. One is kind of goes along with what you're talking about the features of the original Xbox, and the other one kind of follows it up with this today and age. You know, DirectX, is it fair to say that if there was no DirectX, there would be no Xbox? And the follow-up question to that would be, is DirectX 12 on Xbox One even that big of a deal anymore, or was it a much bigger deal back when the Xbox original was started?
You guys probably know that the name Xbox comes from DirectX box, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was a piece of hardware designed to be optimized for DirectX. So yeah, there'd be no Xbox without DirectX.
No, but would it be another iteration of something else, or without DirectX coming to console market, then Microsoft would have just never even done that kind of thing?
It's hard to say because without DirectX, gaming might have died on the PC and it might have gone to Apple. You know, I really don't know.
Interesting.
Oh, that's gross.
So, but what about today? What about with DirectX 12 on Xbox One? You hear that? It's kind of like a buzzword. I'm sure we'll talk about 4K and VR and all these other kind of buzzwords later on, but DirectX 12 is kind of a buzzword.
Do you guys really give a shit about 4K? Do you think it makes that big a difference?
We're going to ask you that.
Well,
Tim
Well,
thinks
you're
it
asking-
makes a world of difference.
I think that people are going to buy it. Casuals will flock to it because I think it's going to be able to do 4K on the media side and on the game side. It's going to outperform Sony by a lot, third-party games. And I just think it'll be like the third-party console will be looked at for multiplats. It's going to be definitely a secure position for Xbox with Scorpio.
Well, I think, you guys need to decide which one of these two philosophies you espouse, because you complain about there not being enough exclusives, like because the exclusives are important, but then you're saying that, you know, the technology is what's going to win it. And I'm going to
say win, it's going to help them.
I have a strong opinion on this, that technology matters not. Nobody fucking cares. Nobody, no mom goes into into Best Buy and says, please show me the console with the highest fill rate.
Yeah, but when they say I think that when you look at something like 1080p, that was a big deal. that it was viewed as more powerful. Would you agree with PlayStation 4 at the time? Going back to,
I think that what happened, I think it seems clear to me that what happened was the adoption rate of televisions that could play content and of cable services that gave content in 1080 were big enough that when your game console couldn't make images that same resolution, your game console looked like it was dated.
Mm-hmm.
And so what needed to happen was that everything you played on the television you looked like it was the same resolution. So I think 4K is only going to be important if we see a proliferation of 4K programming. If we continue to see 1080p programming, then 4K may not be a selling point for game consoles or for televisions.
That's an interesting look at it.
yeah, I hope that they strive to do 4K and we're not in a shitbox 1080.
Yeah,
I want the
Yeah.
4K. I mean, I got 4K TVs, and, you know,
I'm not saying that isn't like butter. What I'm saying is that the thing that commercially counts is how much content is available on a platform, and that platform can be Nintendo or PlayStation. The platform can also be 4K. It could be 3D.
Right.
And so if there's a ton of 4K content out, then that might make a difference. The other thing you have to realize, it's really fascinating, is that most people can't tell the difference, like between a really well converted movie running at full 1080p and running at 4K. Like when you sit on your couch, it doesn't make that much difference, right? Because
Right.
the film isn't rendering to some super crazy resolution to show off resolution. A game would take advantage of the 4K and do amazing shit, right? But like the thing that people in the family use the TV for is differently optimized than what the game console is going to be used for, right? And like the family buys the TV, not the gamer. I mean, unless your family is set up properly and the gamers are in charge, which is how families should be set up. Let's say that there are other people who don't play in the house. Let's say
So basically, you're
unfortunate-
saying if the 4K proliferation actually happens, it's going to be a good thing. If it doesn't, it pretty much is just not a big deal.
Well, look, I mean, the ability to render to 4K means that you have tons more graphics power, and tons more graphics power is never a bad thing.
unless there's no games to use it.
Do you think that Scorpio is going to actively hit native 4K in gaming with the specs that are
Who
rumored?
knows? I think it will. And
that's
hitting
good.
4K, you know, what does that mean, hitting 4K?
Hitting it
Like,
natively,
You know,
like
will just take 10 seconds to draw one frame of garbage. You mean render well to 4K, like render?
well, a native 4K. It renders at a straight native 4K. You know,
Right.
it doesn't checkerboard. Like, do you think that Scorpio is going to have enough grunt to do in this console refresh to do Xbox One games at 4K? Pretty much everyone. A couple you probably have off, but
I
you think they'll hit it consistently?
That's even possible from a software standpoint, because a lot of the games for Xbox One take advantage. Like every console game tries to go as fast as it can. So the ones that are more optimized like to run at the resolution that they're designed for, right? And so converting those up is hard. It's not like the old days where you would like convert a PlayStation game to like a PlayStation 2 game and it would like fix the texturing and raise the resolution and stuff using all the native assets. The assets now are wrapped into the shaders and everything else, and it can be harder to sort of automatically make things look good. You should read, there's a really interesting article about the release of the updated Skyrim on PS4. And I had extensively tested the release Skyrim, and I can tell you that it's quite bueno, but it talks a lot about how hard it is to up-res things.
Really,
Non-trivial.
gotta check it
So,
out.
I got a question. So, what do you think about the mid-cycle upgrades? The PS4 Pro, the Scorpio. Do you think that this is going to be the standard moving forward of every couple years you'll get an iterative
Console.
a better system every few years for a higher price, and that's how the future gaming will be? Or I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Are we boring Toronto? Are you okay there? Are you hanging in there?
Oh no, it's just my face. I get this all the time. This is just my face.
dude.
Maka has
my face.
resting bitch face. So
So the
He's doing his
The-
Zoolander.
reason for releasing those now is to create media events so that they can, generate more sales. How many years has it been in this console cycle so far?
4.
Yeah, 4. Yeah, almost 4.
So we're getting about to the 5-year cycle, right?
Yeah.
And so they're starting to feel antsy. So, when you say midlife, it's interesting because it's not midlife at all. They're at end of life. I think what's really happening is that the cost of new architecture has become so much higher than it ever has been before, that these guys are characterizing these as mid-cycle releases so that the expectations are lower. But they have to release something because they're coming to the end of the natural cycle. Also, I don't think anybody is sure what's going on with the display device. That, one of the things that really drives the technology is the display device, which isn't built in on the console. You need a TV in the house. So what's the installed base of TVs with 4K? What's this projected to be? Like, what are people going to be watching? What internet speed are people going to have? Like, what are the characteristics of that internet connection? How is that going to be used? What are the expectations of people for content? How integrated do they want content to be? Are people going to use this device to watch all content, or are they going to expect to just use it for games? All of these questions have no answer, and it's something that you have to guess at. And what these guys are doing right now is guessing at that with a smaller incremental investment than they have with other console cycles.
Okay, so if you're in charge, if you have Phil's job right now, what would be the first thing you would do when it comes to
Slit my
Scorpio?
wrist. No,
What'd you say? What was the joke?
I said slit my wrists. So
On Twitter?
it's a hard position to be in because look, let's say that the cost of releasing a new generation of consoles like triples every console cycle. All right, and so the first console cycle, like for Atari, when they released the first cartridge-based game console, the VCS, it cost them like $3 to do that, right? Or something. It cost them like $100,000. And now to release a genuine new console cycle project on the scale of like creating a nuclear weapons program for a third world country, like it's like an impossible amount of money that no company can have. Especially when on top of that you include the money for developing content for that system, which is also going to be crazy expensive. So it would be like creating a movie studio from scratch and all the movies, and the price tag for that is so astronomically large that probably nobody can think about that. So they're trying to find a way to make the business actually work. So having dodged your question about Phil.
Yeah, you sure you dodged it like a pro.
And then talking about something unrelated to it, I'll try to answer your question. So what I would do if I was Phil, I probably wouldn't be allowed to do. And at Microsoft, I did a lot of things that I wasn't allowed to do. I got called into a lot of angry meetings with guys whose names you know, but I will not mention.
I know what you're talking about.
I would probably do, a set of interviews like this, where I would talk about these pressures to gamers. One of the things that none of the console companies do that great is create a sense of community outside of community management of message boards and shit in games and content streams in games. Creating a real community of gamers is a powerful thing. I mean, there are a lot of gamers now. It's a mainstream thing. I know very few gamers who I wouldn't play a game with. I mean, I know you guys have feuds and shit between yourselves, and it's crazy because everyone cares about the same thing. Everybody cares about this medium. It's like we're all a part of taking this thing and elevating it into the most prominent media and the most entertaining thing the human race has ever seen. I say that with absolutely no irony. I believe that is the case. I look at the Oscars yesterday and I'm like, how did it happen?
Fuck show.
that motion pictures achieved this like religion-like status where the people who make motion pictures are gods and we worship them. We listen to everything that they have to say because movies are the be-all, end-all of everything. And I think that as gamers, we believe that games are all that and more, right? And there's a huge opportunity right now for people to harness the community of gamers and harness all of that energy to feed back into products and consoles and everything that happens, and to let people know, what's going on when the sausage is made, so that people can be supportive instead of suspicious about what's going on. And I think for Phil and the guys at Nintendo, their hands are tied because they do work for companies, and those companies have investors, and they have rules about media and press and how they want to message things, and they have other products that aren't related to games, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's tough. But my first intuition would be to just like have verbal diarrhea to everyone and say, look, guys, I cancel games. These are my best friends, the guys I go out to dinner with, and it makes me fucking ill that I had to do it, but the budget isn't working out, and here's why. And they didn't make their milestones, and it totally sucks. And here I am with my buddy whose game I just canceled, and we're going to talk to you about it. We're going to talk to you about why it sucks, and we're going to tell you our ideas about turning it around. Give us feedback. Maybe we can figure this out.
So transparency, basically.
And the worst thing that would happen is that everybody would know what the deal was. And the best thing that would happen is maybe 2-3 million people would reply to this thing with ideas, and Phil could go to the guys who are controlling the purse and say, look, I got 3 million hits on this fucking thing. Let's not cancel it.
Wow.
Anyway, that's an idea.
Hey, Seamus, so you said that spending money at Microsoft is difficult, kind of, but
spending money on content. So there's a big difference there.
But I mean, I just say this because it was in the news today that Minecraft is up to like 122 million copies sold, and I think they bought that for $2.5 billion. And at the time they bought it, it wasn't that big of a franchise.
When they bought it, it was an epic franchise. The numbers
they got a great deal on it.
Yeah, so that's the difference between buying something that is a really good business already and taking a bet on something that doesn't yet exist.
Well, that's a safe bet.
There are plenty of investors who are willing to take a bet on technology, on car manufacturing, all sorts of shit. There are very few investors who are willing to take a bet on creative ideas. And there's an art form to this in motion picture investment, in investment in music, investment in Broadway shows. There are specialists. There are bond companies and banks. Banks have whole divisions for entertainment finance for Broadway shows. For movies, there are funds that are set up. It's called structured finance for entertainment, and it doesn't really exist yet in games. Some people have tried. We were pretty successful for a little while.
That's interesting.
And what I'm trying to tell you is that there are not a lot of people who invest money in things who understand games and are willing to take risks, big risks of the kinds that games require. And so there's not what's called a capital market for this, meaning that there are no people competing for your dollar or to give you money and to get the return out of your product. And so, like I said before, investors, be they institutional, like Microsoft investing in their first party group, or third party, like Electronic Arts has investors that are institutional, it has individual investors, it has shareholders, and all of those people want to have a say in whether or not a given game is funded, and a lot of them may have no fucking clue whatsoever how a game is made. And they have no fucking clue that every build always doesn't look great. They have no fucking clue that sometimes things really do come together at the end, and other times they don't, and you can lose all your money. The point is that because that doesn't exist yet, it can be very, very, very hard to build a big portfolio of games.
Well, it sounds like they take and I'll let Rand go ahead, but they take a lot of safe bets. It has to make sense.
Well, yeah. So I was going to ask you about something else that is a little risky, something that a lot of people have called the future of gaming, VR, HoloLens. We got Oculus Rift, we got HTC Vive, we got Sony's VR, we got HoloLens, which Microsoft is like saying years away. Those are risky bets. I think you'd probably agree on that, but it doesn't seem like at least it's caught on at all in the mainstream from the way these devices are selling, right? I mean, what is your take on VR and HoloLens and augmented reality and stuff?
I want to know what's going on in Canada. What was that? What was this?
Stretch, man.
Does
Can't
that-
stretch.
I'm glad I didn't go on camera, man. I'm glad I didn't go.
Can't do anything. I'm gonna turn the camera around.
You better. In Japan at the name Xbox, because in Japan, when like in America, if you're like, let's say like that your kid is down the street and they're like in across the street, and you would yell no, and you'd go like this or something or something, right? In Japan, you do this. That means no. And so we were like essentially making the no box console, which may be part of the reason it never did well there. What the fuck was the question?
I was talking about
Do you think
about
VR's dead?
how risky VR and AR is, and how it doesn't seem to have reached the mainstream yet, and if it's a viable platform in your opinion going forward.
That VR faces a challenge that people never talk about that's really similar to the challenge that was faced by Kinect, which is that when you would play a Kinect game, and even more importantly, when you were developing a Kinect game, you could kind of look like an asshole. You're like this sort of thing. And the only thing people are more afraid of than death is like looking foolish in front of their friends. Like this is a sociologically true fact. And so I think that one of the main impediments to VR is, the fact that you are, blind in a room, like, doing this kind of a thing while your friends are around laughing at you or like lighting your shit on fire or whatever. And then I think it's a real impediment. I really do. And I think that's, responsible for some of the challenges that Oculus and those kinds of companies have faced. Because humans are social animals. People are very social when they game. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I actually fairly rarely am alone playing a game. It's usually with a bunch of people around or friends or my kids or whatever, like giving me advice, or I'm like playing with them or against them, and we're always online or always playing somebody else. It's a very social thing, and it always has been since the start. I mean, remember, games started in arcades, and an arcade was a party with games. Mm-hmm. And so it's always been a very social thing. And so taking it back to being a very private thing is a big cultural difference. And I think that's a very serious challenge. Maybe not so much for AR, depending on how the on what the format is, but it could be a challenge.
So,
All right, well,
go ahead.
Oh,
Man.
go right ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to take it in a totally different direction. So if you got more about the VR and AR, go ahead.
No. I was just it had nothing to do with that. It was just ask your question.
Oh, okay. So Seamus, you talked about, how you worked with, you didn't say it by name, but the Capital Entertainment Group and financing for, making financing for the gaming industry more of a possibility. And now we have stuff like the indie scene that wasn't really something back when the original Xbox started. So would you say that, getting funding from publishers like Devolver Digital, Team 17 for small indie projects, for, single man projects, even to get their games started, you think that's easier today? You think that would be not even a possibility back when you started, or how do you think that's changed?
It's radically easier today. The value, in the size of the investment in that marketplace makes it like perfect. And so we've seen an explosion of really interesting smaller games, which is awesome to see. And like it harkens back to the days of shareware, which was this like beautiful like 6 month long or couple of year long period in the early 90s, where you could actually have a career out of doing innovative little games, and people would pay you for them. And people were very honest about it. I mean, this is the thing, I think as gamers, we get this reputation as being these like, hacker assholes, like looking to get everything for free. But in reality, the thing you discover is very touching, which is that, if you make a beautiful thing, people will gladly pay you for it and be excited about it and be your fan and show up to your talk and like send you cupcakes. And this really happens all the time, and I think that's really the underpinning of the game culture that I was talking about earlier as being such a powerful force.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that, I know you worked throughout your career in dev advocacy, if you will. So would you think that dev advocacy is really as necessary as it was back then? I know you talked a lot, even during this podcast, about, getting financing for these projects to start up. And now, like what you just said about the indie projects and, having publishers work with them directly. Do you think that dev advocacy is a really big thing still, or do you think that's less of a thing that needs to be focused on?
I think that dev advocacy, it worked to some extent. Like, people understand how important devs are now, how important creative people are. There was a period, the last decade, in which it wasn't really understood that, it took good people to make good games. And now I think everybody generally understands that there are auteurs in games. And it's really clear in the indie scene. Everybody knows the name of the people who make the games. They may know the individuals' names in addition to the company name. And that's, it's a solved problem, more or less. The funding is happening reasonably. And it's, it's an exciting time. It's a lot of innovation, and it's really cool. We still have the problem with like big console games, and as we push the technology harder and you go to 4K, the cost of those games gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And in VR, the cost gets bigger and bigger and bigger for the big launches that we all want. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem that still hasn't been solved.
All right, I got a question I gotta have answered. Tell me a story about Ballmer and what type of guy Ballmer is. I've always been a fan. Obviously, he's now with the Clippers, and you hear the stories and of him now as an owner. How can you give a description of that guy? And did you ever see some of the press conferences where he came out and started screaming developers and going absolutely bananas? Do you remember any of that?
No, I have no recollection of that at all.
Okay, all right. I got to show you the video.
My kitchen and my friend Neil again, we're out of charge, so we're getting a battery. Out of time.
Having scotches.
So could you tell us a story about Ballmer? Just give us an insight on the man, if you could somehow. Something to make us laugh.
I will. Let's go back upstairs to do this. So
you look like you're in like a video game right now, actually.
Yeah.
Like Resident Evil right now.
It's like Blair Witch Project or something.
I try to keep my house really creepy.
It's nice. Are you going to E3 this year?
I probably can't avoid it. All right.
You should go.
Tim just says that because he wants to take a picture with you and shake your hand.
Awesome. All right. So Ballmer. Yeah, there's a great Ballmer story, and then Neil probably is correct, and I need to go not be rude to him, but there's a cafeteria at the Red West campus at Microsoft, which is where was in the very early days, and like 5 or 6 buildings all share this cafeteria, so everybody's there. And one day, after I think we've been basically greenlit and gone through all sorts of budget meetings and all sorts of hell, I was, holding my tray with Kevin, the first guy I called, and kind of slowly and talking about something. And out of nowhere, from about an inch behind my right ear, was Ballmer yelling, "You're gonna lose all our money!" And I nearly threw my tray all the way across the fucking restaurant. And I turned around and he's like, "Yeah, lose all your money, Steve." Awesome. Yeah.
All right, so before we let you go, one quick question. This is an issue that's separating gamers. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Oh, I'm going to say that it really depends on what kind of night you want to have.
The issue remains unsolved then.
Only in Canada, right?
Well, it's very nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have you on.
Trying to stay awake up there in Canada.
It's rough out there. Thanks for coming on TXR, Seamus. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for abusing us.
Tim did a lot of work trying to get you on here.
Thanks for
I
the
enjoyed
abuse.
listening to you talk about everything.
You guys had a rare privilege also. That was Neil Stevenson, who wrote Snow Crash and invented the word avatar, who's a New York Times best-selling author, science fiction author. Check it out.
Wow, look at you hanging out with the big shots.
No, he's
You're only like 20 minutes away. I couldn't even get an invite. What the hell?
Go to E3, please. Well, maybe we could we could wrestle.
I said in my tweet, man, it's because of my deep hate for you, my deep personal hatred for you. Just so you know.
I love you too, Seamus.
Brother, PM me and let's have a beer. Let's drive up the 110 and we'll have a beer.
Definitely, anytime.
Cool, man.
All
Awesome.
right. Well,
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for coming on.
I love the
All right,
abuse.
take care. Sorry for the technical problems, but
You're good.
the FBI is going to come after me for how I solved it. I better go.
Amazing.
Take it easy.
Get out of the back door.
All right, see you guys later.
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 Oh, so that was
All right.
quite interesting.
Well, we got our asses kicked.
Like, I didn't know what to say. That guy's he's badass.
Yeah.
Well, he shit all over Macca, though. I'll tell you.
No,
We didn't let him know this is a
Finally-
shit on Rand podcast.
Finally, somebody called out Maka for his resting bitch face. I've been waiting, 65 episodes for someone to be like, why does Maka always look like he's bored out of his fucking mind?
It's in the comments all the time. All you guys got to do is read the comments. It would have happened earlier. We didn't give him the memo that it's the shit on Rand podcast. I guess he.
Oh,
He called me a stalker. He killed everyone.
Fucking mess this guy.
Yeah.
He didn't get Rand.
It's always
Rand was
it's always
quiet.
shit on Rand.
No,
didn't he-
Rand was quiet 'cause
I was-
everybody in the comment section were like, "What the fuck happened to Rand? He lose his voice?"
Hey, I was letting you guys handle it. I was seeing if you guys could handle
That
the.
was a tough interview.
question.
No, he's a cool dude, but he's funny. He just speaks. his
I
mind.
didn't want to butt in and be like, by the way, why would anybody want the Duke controller? Because it's the worst controller ever fucking made.
Oh,
But
ouch.
I
But
wanted to be
now it comes
respectful
out.
because
I don't know.
I wanted to be.
He fired the shots while they were loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah. But hey,
I don't know.
spending-
To me, that's kind of a chicken shit. You know what I mean? You should have said it while he was on there.
Nah, that's okay. I've said it to David Preen. That's good enough.
We all agree that if the Duke ever came
I
out,
would buy it.
nostalgia factor alone, not for actual play.
Right?
absolutely.
Not to you know what I mean for display case, of course.
I want it to be a working controller, but I would definitely buy it. And sometimes use it.
That was fun. That
Fighters.
was fun. But we do have more to. I think we have a bunch of stuff to talk about, though. Do we not?
Probably.
Yeah, a few things.
The floor plan. Rand, take it away.
Oh
The
yeah.
floor plan. Okay, so yeah, I did a video about this on my YouTube channel. Microsoft has a smaller booth size this year, roughly by 55%. They're also moving halls from South Hall to the West Hall to the South Hall, or the South Hall to the West Hall. I think it's the West Hall to the South Hall. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, that is correct.
So of course, the narrative on Twitter and all the different places you would normally visit for gaming news is, well, this just confirms that Microsoft has literally no games to show, because if they did have games to show, they would have their regular booth and not a smaller booth. So I said my piece, but I haven't talked to you guys about this. So somebody hit me up with your thoughts on this change.
Well, what people don't really understand is that it's not even really that much smaller, right? I mean, I think the perception is that not being next to PlayStation and Nintendo is going to be more of a factor than the size of the booth. Honestly, I think it's not that big of a deal, but I think perception, placing it in the other hall, away from, everyone's got that picture, right? You've seen that on Twitter, the picture down the corridor. You got the PlayStation on the side, Xbox on the side of that straight corridor, and now it's not going to be like that. And it looks like Microsoft, I don't believe this, but I'm just playing it from the angle that's been played, that Microsoft is pulling away from the competition in order, to separate themselves and not make themselves look bad next to the competition that has more to show.
I would take it totally different, and I would say, that they're closer to the devs and the publishers that are there that are usually in that side of E3. So I kind of like that more than to be Xbox versus PlayStation versus Nintendo. You know what I mean? Because Xbox will be over there with the EA. No, EA ain't gonna be there. Who's gonna be there?
They're next to Activision and
Activision.
Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So Ubisoft and Activision. You know what I mean? I prefer that because that's where I want to hang out at.
Well, Tim said he preferred it because it's going to be cooler because it's too damn hot. It's
Yeah,
too damn hot in that other hall.
It really is. You could even ask Mr. Stallion. I remember seeing him the first year, and he was like, "Oh my God, it's so hot." And then the second year, where I was there a lot more, it's just in that spot. It's so hot. Whatever it is, I don't know if it's a generator or the AC is not spaced out. But wow, it's hot. So for me, it's a no big deal because you don't play your big games, even if Xbox announced Sunset Overdrive 2 or or huge AAAs. You're not going to be playing those games. You're going to be playing the Culling. You're going to be playing Below. No, I don't. Crackdown 3 will probably have a sectioned off. You might even watch a video on Crackdown 3. So it's not indicative of the games. I think more of it is displays, and a lot of it's back rooms that people actually don't think like. An Xbox 4, there's a whole section, huge area sectioned off just for the Xbox people, and they all hang in there. They go in there.
It's a press section, but yeah, it's about that's what I was gonna say. It's about a third of it was a press section, and then of the remaining 2/3, like a fourth of it was just the Lamborghini sitting there.
Yeah,
and then not last year, but the year before, that was the Halo HoloLens spot. So you know what I mean? They always take up big spots. Oh, and don't forget, Battlefield 1 had a huge space in the corner.
Yeah, so maybe maybe I think they're just spreading things out. I don't know. I wouldn't look at it as it good news or bad news. I don't know about if they're allowed to have a second floor or not, because I remember the Mafia exhibit had 2 stories. I think.
Yeah, it did.
So they might just stack some stuff, which would be interesting. They might not have a car or a press section.
Remember, they had the lounge where Inferno won his award upstairs, where the couch and all that, and that's where all the cameras.
Yeah, the Daily Show was upstairs last year. Remember?
Yeah. So they might have a second story where they can kind of essentially double their square feet up to a certain point, and and if they spread out all their games along the floor to all their all the other developers and stuff, then it should be enough. I mean, it'll be interesting. I would say the highlight was the Xbox versus PlayStation, kind of right next to each other, battling it out every year.
Right.
They got rid of that.
Right.
It's a tough decision. I would say it's probably, if I had to guess, I would say it's going to hurt them a little bit, but hopefully they make the best out of it.
Well, another thing that people
listen for Keith out there, because I know he's listening and watching. How's my mic today? Everything all right? We good?
Wow. He's always yelling about something.
Yeah, and we also don't know if there's going to be a fan fest outside.
Yeah, there's a lot to it that's planned out. It's not really indicative of anything. So I really didn't pay attention to that whole thing. I just said that, I was happy that we're out of that location. When I literally say it's 25 degrees hotter, it's 25 degrees hotter. You got people smelling, you got people's arms sweating, and you literally go to the left or right in the past, and it was so much cooler. So good riddance.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think a lot of it has to do with that thick ass carpet.
I don't know what was going on, dude. It's like 20 degrees hotter there.
Yeah,
and that is not an exaggeration. I don't know.
He's in the comment section. There's some people that just. I mean, it's.
I used to have to walk. You have to walk. Yeah, I used to have to walk over to either get out of the thing and walk down to get away from the heat. It's really at times too hot.
Okay, I got to ask you a question.
Beard.
Yeah, I'll just say beard. His beard in his avatar. you had your Microsoft band, your first E3. How many steps were you making each day?
Oh yeah, it was 20 to 30,000.
Well, there you go, right there.
Jesus.
30,000 was the day I thought I was gonna fucking drop dead because it was so.
It was so hot. Remember?
Your feet hurt, and you just honestly that. And this is after all your. See, this is the thing that people don't get a lot with E3. A lot of this is after the fireworks. It's after the show, and this is now the days after. And your adrenaline is already knocked down. So then you just go through that. I call it like the torture run. The third day is I usually still go each day, but the third day is like the most depressing day, I feel, when everyone's leaving and it's just over.
That was the day that Rand and I were like, we're not even gonna go, man. To hell with that. And then we ended up just going anyways because we ended up having lunch with somebody and we were across the street. We said, what the hell?
Well, we stayed to the end until they closed it.
Yeah, we did.
All right.
I don't know. You could say we're damage controlling or whatever.
I don't think so.
I honestly don't think that it's gonna be a big deal. I prefer it. I like the idea of them being on the other side.
A lot of people
I hate the other hall.
Yeah, but a lot of people who say it don't really know the layouts and don't know how big the fucking place is. It's like
That's exactly right.
you just
you know what? You got to think Vegas, the casinos. It's like casino hopping. You know what I mean? It's like going from Caesar's Palace to the Bellagio. It's just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Maka. Before we
What up?
Before we end the show,
Yeah.
you wanted to talk about your Horizon impressions because you played a little bit of it.
No, I just thought
Why don't you
thought people might care about them, but if people don't care, that's cool too, man.
Well, just tell the. I mean, all right. Well, I have a question. Are you enjoying the game?
Yeah.
How does it look? People are saying it's best looking console game.
It's beautiful. It's the best looking. I mean, I said Uncharted 4 was the best looking console game. It looks better than Uncharted, so by definition, it's the best looking console game ever made. I mean, not that I'm really give a fuck about graphics 99% of the time, like if it looked amazing, if it looked like the Order 1886 and had the gameplay of the Order 1886, then I wouldn't care. But the gameplay is really good too. It has a surprisingly engaging in-depth story where you end up caring about the characters. The graphics are good. The sound design is really good. The gameplay is rewarding and complex. And there's a lot of different ways to tackle every situation. There's a lot of variety in the weapons. There's a lot of ways to approach every scenario. The stealth mechanics, for all intents and purposes, work very well. Is it intensive purposes or intense and purposes?
Intense and purposes.
Yeah,
I was going to call you out on that, but
I thought so. I was like, that sounded wrong.
Okay.
It's because it's Canadian.
Yeah, in Canada we don't speak English, right? So yeah, I would say there's a couple of weird scenarios where if you get overrun by too many AI at the same time, you kind of have to die. There's no way around it, which kind of sucks. I would say the climbing, like the scaling rocks and stuff, it's not as solid as a game like Tomb Raider is, not even close. The heads-up display is very overwhelming. I think it's because the game's so much of an RPG that you just get bombarded with health, quests, like dialogue, your items, and there's just so much shit on your screen all the time that sometimes you honestly can't see what's happening on screen, which is shitty. The AI is all right, but there's a lot of things going for it, and I think overall, the story, the graphics, the audio, the gameplay, the world itself has a lot of. It's very fresh and exciting. It has a lot of variety. It has a lot of things going for it. It's not better than Uncharted 4, in my opinion, which is still the best PlayStation 4 exclusive out there, but it is a close second. And I would say that if they continue with the franchise, that's an excellent idea. For people wondering, it plays a lot like Metal Gear Solid 5, which is a great game, Far Cry Primal, and ReCore all mashed up, and kind of the best parts of all of them. And honestly, playing Horizon Zero Dawn, when you get deeper and deeper into the game, you start kind of learning about the animals and how you can use them to your advantage. You can kind of tame animals. And there's certain areas you visit and you kind of explore them in a certain way. It honestly felt to me like what Recore could have been if Recore had the full AAA treatment. But it's a good game, and I would recommend it. If you have a PlayStation 4, like I think you kind of have to buy it, right? But I don't know.
Definitely. You know what? And I mean, I'll be honest. The commercials that have a lot of commercials going on right now. It's pulling me to like go around and buy a PlayStation just to play. I'm really curious about it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. So you probably have more thoughts next week. But we'll have
I'm
more
putting
thoughts
out
on
my
the games
review
we
in the
played.
next
And
20 minutes, by the way, if anyone
next
cares.
20 minutes left as a review up. So next week we'll be talking more about the rest of the news that happened. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the Seamus Blackley interview. It was pretty entertaining. TXR is always trying to bring you high quality guests, right, South? That's what we try to do here.
Hey, I'm grinding. I'm
Yeah.
everybody knows behind the scenes what I'm trying to pull, but I'm grinding. I'm trying to bring some good content, for us and you know what I mean? Because I mean that we just talked to the guy who made the OG Xbox. You know what I mean? That
You're pulling out your best
That's
harassment strats and going crazy.
Yeah.
that's right, baby.
But
We're going hard in the paint.
But with that, we're going to end the show. I want to thank everybody for listening live to the episode. Thank you for listening to iTunes and Google Play. Let's give out some outros. Mike, what do you got going on the rest of the week, buddy?
Horizon in about 18 minutes, it looks like. And 4 hours of quarters Thursday at 7 p.m. And picking up my Switch on Friday, hopefully at 10 a.m. if I can get out of work.
Awesome. Switch time.
Your girl's the boss. You better say, baby. You know what it is.
I've already worked that angle, but to get another game system isn't really flying right now. So.
Tim, the people can find you on Twitter. Am I right?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you everyone for being here, and thanks to Seamus.
Seamus.
Mr. S.
Mr. S.
Yes.
He gave strict instructions not to screw his name up, and I screwed his name up, but at least he's not here. But really appreciate that Mr. S.
I can't believe you're all about that.
No, he came here and he gave us time, so I really am grateful.
Yeah. South, what are you doing? What are you up to?
I'll be on that. You catch me on Xbox Live.
How about that?
South.
Catch me outside.
How about that?
Maka?
Catch me on the live.
I'm putting out my Horizon Zero Dawn review like literally right now. Putting out another Horizon video tomorrow and a couple guides playing some stuff. I don't even know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but if I'm not, pretend I didn't. I'll have a review of the Nintendo Switch up for Friday. It'll be like a first impressions review type thing. But I do get to spend some time with that console this week, which is going to be fun. Horizon Zero Dawn, Ghost Recon's coming out pretty soon. That should be fun too. And I made a monitor. I see this gigantic, sexy Samsung monitor that they sent me. I made a review for that too, which was fun.
How much does that retail for?
$350.
Wow.
That's not bad.
$350.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. As for me, I'll have videos up all week. Rand's Indie Spotlight returns after being off for a week. So I got that, plus my regular Rand's Rants, which might be the name of the opinion pieces I do. So check that out.
Rant Al Thor is what it
huge-
is. You don't get to argue.
Don't
Rant Al
get
Thor.
me started.
I like Rant Out 4.
So huge giveaway tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that. And with that, this has been episode number 73. We will see you all next week. Have a good one, guys.
There's also Destiny's 6v6 tournament happening in like 2 minutes.
Which
Check
I
us
might
out on Twitter.
stream. So check that.
Boom.
Take it easy, guys.
See ya.
Later.